Hello, everyone. My guest on today. I'm just waiting for you all to get notified. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, today is all about single life.
Charlotte. Oh, hang on. No, you don't want that. That's better.
Hello.
Charlotte. Hello.
How are
How
you?
are you? I'm very good, very excited.
Yes, me.
Trying to get a grip on tech at the moment, which is a bit interesting. Because I tried to do this on the desktop, but it said, no, go on your phone. Like, I'm all right. So I'm trying now to balance this without dropping it. There we go. Good. There we go. Yes. Very excited. Very excited to be here.
Perfect. So yeah, do you want to kind of start by introducing yourself, like who you are, and then I'll jump in with who I am?
Yeah, sure. So, hello to everybody on the stream. My name's Vishad. I'm the owner and creator and founder of innerpeacewalker.com. And I help people primarily with their mindset and transformation work. The idea being is that I help you reconcile and overcome feelings of low self-worth without just accentuating the positives, and let you define and forge your path to your inner peace.
Fantastic. So yeah, in case you don't know who I am Charlotte. I'm a conscious relationship coach. And essentially I help people at all stages of the relationship cycle, whether it's a breakup, being okay with being single, which is why we're here today, get back into dating again, or, relationship challenges and struggles.
That's awesome. I'm glad you introduced the topic there in your introduction, because yeah, exactly, right. The quick background story to this is that Charlotte and I were on a mutual group, and we saw that a lot of our posts resonate with each other in terms of values and outcomes, etc. So we thought, why not be a good idea to discuss a topic that's quite pertinent in both our audiences, and that is the concept of being okay with singledom. We talked about the fact that wherever you are in your relationship cycle, whether you're just trying to find a new one or coming out of one, etc. We want people to understand the idea of being comfortable with the space in between, and not get caught up in the mire of desperately trying to not be single. So that's whether you go on dating apps, events, or try and even get your ex back and stuff like that. So we thought, what, let's have a session where we discuss all that, really.
Yeah, and I think both of us have had to personally come to terms with being okay with being single. If I should bit of my background, I was obviously married, and that ended, and I wasn't kind of expecting to suddenly find myself being single, and on top of that being a single parent. So yeah, for me, suddenly a lot of things come up for me where I had to just be really okay with suddenly finding myself being single, being a single mum. And I think all the connotations that can come with that, all the labels, all of the
Yeah.
stories and beliefs that you can kind of put onto yourself around, what that means about you. So for me personally, there was a lot of coming to terms with, suddenly being single when I didn't expect to be, and then being actually okay with that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that these things come about at various points in our lives, and sometimes unexpectedly, and we have an idea of like, what happens now. No one's ever taught us, here's what you do. There's no manual, if you will. And I was reading something the other day online, is that part of that struggle, I guess, comes from the fact that our brain itself creates what's called a neural map. So when we forge a relationship, it builds on the idea that basically since birth, we build the notion of having people close to us, so primarily our parents, our first relationships in life, that we want them to be here, now, and close. So it addresses the idea of space, time, and depth. So that if that person isn't around, our brains go, it's okay, they've not disappeared. We sort of create that mental representation of, you know, they're either here right now and close. And when they're not here, say they're out the room or wherever they might be, we take comfort from that. And when we have, you know, more intimate relationships as we grow older, we rely on that same network to create the same kind of relationship. But because we're, you know, close to that person, that map becomes really strong. And when we experience a break in that map, whether, you know, the partner moves on or we split up or whatever it might be, then our brain has to go, right, I can't rely on those pathways that I created anymore. Because you might still be looking for your ex, like, oh, they'll be back. You know, you talk to yourself that this isn't happening. But then really, as you go on with new experiences, your brain is slowly trying to work itself. So I guess one of the first points I wanted to introduce is whatever thought process you go through in these times, it's okay. So if you do feel grief, sadness, anger, wanting to be back with somebody, that's okay. You know, we're not here to say that you shouldn't feel like this or you should feel like this instead.
Yeah.
Anything you feel is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, someone's just commented to say, like, you know, they're a single mum too. So yeah, you know, really resonate with that. And if you have any questions or comments as we go through, like, please just drop them into like the comment box.
Very much so.
Answers as we go along. But yeah, just what you're saying though is like, it's so important. Because, you know, we do get certain needs met from relationships. And there's a lot of things out there that say, you know, we should be meeting all of our own needs all of the time. But actually, you know, it's a both and, you know, we should be meeting our own needs, but also it's a beautiful thing for somebody else to, you know, meet our needs as well. So I think that's one of the hardest bits of being single is suddenly, you know, it is down to you to meet your own needs again. And you haven't got that partner and that's suddenly, you know, gone. And it's so easy to try to replace that with a like for like, rather than actually just being okay in that space in between with, actually, do you know what, like, now I am responsible for meeting my own needs. I was getting needs met by this person and that's not happening anymore. And how can I find different ways to, you know, healthy ways to get those needs met so I still feel good, I'm still getting that dopamine hit that I was getting before. Because, you know, our brains get used to certain rewards from a relationship and then I still kind of expect them, and suddenly they're gone, you know. And it can be a hard thing because sometimes, you know, someone was a huge part of our world that's suddenly gone and there's a lot of empty spaces. You know, what do I do with my time in the evening? Like, who do I message? Who do I chat to today? Who do I share that bit of news with? Yeah, who do I get?
And that's, I think, when the temptation comes in, sorry to interrupt, is that with that person you may have been spending that time recently to message, to go out with or wherever, if they're not there, then it's the brain going again. You can try and get them back because you want that, as you said, that reward, they're meeting the needs from it. And you struck upon two really key points there really well about taking your own responsibility and meeting your own needs, which is tough. You know, this isn't an overnight thing. And it will take different amount of time for different people. And again, it comes back to that central message of it's okay. Now, a lot of the time with this, a lot of it is practice because you're opening to new experiences of someone not being there. And it is tough, as you say, because you've been, you know, for a while you've literally had your own needs met subconsciously. You didn't have to actively think about, you know, when are they going to reply back? You know, I've got the double blue tick of death on WhatsApp and then replied and then pick my phone call up, or, you know, all these kind of thoughts. You just, they go away with these kind of people. And when you're back in that flow, feel that pull, that's when you may start to have these thoughts of like panicking and this is always going to be a forever thing and where's the next person. But I think it then goes on to, like, you know, you can just stop for a second. Like if I mention my own experience as well, that I spoke about this with my coach when I had coaching a couple of years ago, and we spoke about, you know, the struggles with singledom. And one of the things he said that, you know, so he and I are quite sporting fans, so apologies to any non-sports fans out there. He said, if you look at the best players in the world at any sport that you do, they rarely go chasing the ball, the point, the goal, or whatever. They know the game enough to just pause for a second and let the game come to them and not actively chase everything and burn themselves out. So if you apply that analogy to yourself, sometimes if you just pause for a second and allow yourself to feel and process what's going on, you actually surprise yourself at how your subconscious then opens up to more possibilities of going forward and actually being okay.
Yeah. And I think it's that kind of being okay, that space in between of like, the breaking up with somebody and dating again or meeting somebody new. And actually just getting comfortable with finding out, who you are, rediscovering
Yeah.
what do I actually enjoy? What do I want going forwards on my own now that I'm not part of this relationship anymore? Actually just seeing it's like a beautiful kind of experience of curiosity. What bits do I want to shed of myself? Like, how do I want to evolve? What bits do I want to change? What can I learn from this experience that I want to, work on going forward so that my next, relationship experience is even more beautiful than, the last one?
I think that's a really great set of questions there that you mentioned, that you're bringing essentially the experience back to yourself. I know you opened with the fact that it's nice when we meet our own needs in a relationship, and it's nice that somebody else's needs are being met. But when you say we're in this space in between, when you recenter the questions back to yourself, you begin to ask those important questions that you might readily dismiss, of like, well, what do I want? And that was a big thing for me as well when I've gone through this type of experience of like, if I go keep chasing the apps, the events, the websites, the jungle you enter in on, all that kind of thing. When you ask yourself, what do you want? It's like, are you doing the chasing, etc., on behalf of someone else, or to look good to somebody else, like your family or the community or the people around you? Or are you actually looking to meet your needs in an unhealthy way? So you touched on earlier that when we can consider our needs and meet them in healthier ways, what we're doing at the moment is we're chasing these apps and thinking, oh, I go on the website, no one replies to me, and I can't get this and that, which are all valid feelings. They're absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But when we take that a step further, you're like, okay, if I just pause for a second and go, well, do I actually want, say, for example, a relationship, or am I actually comfortable at the moment with what I'm doing? Because I'm meeting my needs elsewhere. Some of the needs that we talk about are things like certainty and control, which is a massive one for everybody. No, and not just in relationships, just in life. We all want to know what's going to happen, to be comfortable, like, yes, that's going to be not changing and it's not going to disrupt me if there's changes. And just being comfortable, like, do you know what, I'm okay being single, and there's other things I can do, whatever that is up to you. It's a massive thing when you realise that. And again, that just comes with practice and being kind to yourself.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on there, like, who you're doing it for. And I think, there's a lot of society pressure and labels around being single, especially at certain points in life, especially as you get older. There's a little bit more kind of shame attached when you're kind of, young and in your early 20s. It's cool to be single, field. As you get older and, you're single in your 30s or your 40s or even 50s, there is that kind of thing of like, I don't want to say that I'm single, or, this feeling of like, I don't want to turn up to certain events on my own without that plus one. And everyone says, congratulations on being single. So being of like, oh, I'm single, this is terrible. Like, I've got to kind of get back out there. I've got to be in a relationship again. Because there's so much kind of pressure rather than, like, it's fine to actually be where you are at now.
And do you think that attitude or perception has come from a certain place? Like, why is it that as we grow older, we shy away from our singledom status? Do you think there's a reason or two behind that?
I think it's kind of that whole sort of society view of like how, we should kind of, meet someone in our 20s and then be with them forever. Because, we do find it really shocking sometimes when a relationship ends. Like, why has this not been, forever? And as much as we go into relationships not thinking, oh, this will be like a 2-year relationship, or this will be like a 6-month one, obviously go into them hoping it'll be long term. But not all relationships are, sometimes they are for, a period of time. But there is still that kind of element of, shame around that. If you've been divorced, there's sort of relations and getting, divorced, etc. So as we get older, it doesn't seem as cool to be like, actually, I'm on my own, I'm single. I mean, there's even like, like, I think for women, like, am I a crazy cat lady is one that stands out to me. When you're like, and all you've got is cat company because, you're on your own.
Might as well lady from The Simpsons just throwing cats around, you know.
Yeah. Or I've even had it on like dating apps where I've had, you know, men say to me, you know, oh, so, you know, you're single at your age. Like, what's kind of like, why is that? Like,
What's the
what's wrong?
story?
Yeah, like, what's the story? You know, you know, like there has to be something that's, you know, wrong with me, or something's up, or something, you know, there's like, there must be a huge reason as to why you've not been snapped up. And I know it's sometimes coming from like more of a compliment, like, you know, you look like an amazing person, like, why are you single? But there's still that kind of element of like judgment there. So like, you know, so why are you single at your age? Why aren't you in like, you know, a marriage or long-term relationship?
Well, exactly, and like as you say, it's like a backhanded compliment, right? On one hand, like, oh, nice one, but then you're like, hey, why is it, you know? And you know, coming from a culture and background as I do of the Indian background, you know, there is this big hang up amongst the older generation of numbers.
Yeah.
You know, literally, if you're at a certain age, that's it. Alarm bells go off everywhere in the community. There's, you know, we declare war, and you know, everyone's like, you know, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And literally, it's a quickly. It turns into a race of like, just glue yourself to anybody, just to stop this status. And I think a lot of it is driven by the idea that, you know, your self-worth is essentially attached to what I call the master plan of life that they have. So like, you know, first of all, get a good education, get a good career, get a good qualification, get a job, find a partner, get kids, you know, and as you miss those targets along the way, people question.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to say a career that's not like, you know, medicine or engineering or something understood, and you do something a bit different, you're like, why is that then? And then, you know, these kind of questions come on. So I think a big thing is like, you know, you talked about growing older with age and struggling with the singledom label and the other labels that you have, you know, whether you're a divorced person or, you know, a single parent, etc. It's just that your self-worth is then attached by people.
Yeah.
So now you have a view that, right, in order for me not to look like the elephant in the room or whatever, I need to find somebody.
Yeah.
And then that drives you to that desperation we were mentioning that, well, I've got to find someone quick.
Yeah.
So when you have your your self-worth locked externally, it's a very difficult position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we do tie a lot of our self-worth to being in a relationship, like, you know, we've been chosen, like we've been good enough to be, you know, selected by someone. And I think when we, you know, suddenly become single, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, what's kind of, you know, and rather than it being actually like, I value myself so much that I wasn't going to stay in, you know, this situation, or, you know, like I am single at this age and I'm absolutely fine with it because, you know, I value who I am and I'm not going to rush into something that's just settling, or I'm not going to stay in a relationship that isn't making me feel good anymore. You know, we actually kind of tie a lot of our self-worth to, you know, being in that relationship.
Absolutely. And it actually brings you back to the title of the session, is that it's okay to be single. And why my perspective is saying what we mean is like, we're not saying never look for anyone again. We're not saying, you know, resist the feelings of wanting to be with someone, because they're absolutely natural. You know, I'm actually feeling that at the moment. Or then also be dismissive of what other people think and feel. Even if they think something different to you, we don't need to go, no, I'm not listening. What we're trying to convey is that when we come from a place of higher self-worth, then we can make these statements more confidently and not just trying to say it to kid other people or get rid of other people or even hide our own feelings.
Yeah.
So what you mentioned about, you know, when you come out of a relationship, you're looking for your own needs, or you're like, well, what do we do? There is that space to be in between and be comfortable in it. Now, there is no magic wand here. You know what I'm saying, right? Do this and you'll be fine. But I think the more you talk about that, like you mentioned that, you know, people attach labels readily or have a quick default reaction. If they hear you're single, it's like, oh, why is that then? You know, there's always a reason or a story. And I think the more we talk about it, the more I guess we remove that sense of, if you're single, you're brave, or you're, you know, it's like an outlier. Because being single is absolutely normal.
Yeah.
You know, I've said out loud a lot recently to, well, pretty much anyone that listens, like, if ultimately I don't end up finding somebody, that's okay. And I'm learning to practice that notion each day, as much as I can. Not like explicitly focusing on it, but the more the sense of like, look, at the end of the day, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're only responsible for yourself. And what I'm learning is that you can't control or influence other people's thoughts, words, behaviors, and feelings. What they think and feel is absolutely up to them. And sometimes a lot of the trap we set ourselves in when we're finding someone, especially in that desperation mode, is like, I've got to do something to please them or they're going to go. I've got to do something to, portray myself as, someone that's a catch or whatever, So it's difficult to grasp, but very worthwhile in
Yeah.
terms of self-worth.
And I think, you know, within that, we actually make a lot of assumptions around like what other people are about
Yes.
us. And actually, when you sit back and notice, they're probably not thinking anything. I think the first time, like, when I've, say, been out for like a coffee by myself or for lunch and I wasn't okay with being single, I
Yeah.
read it because I think, oh, everyone knows I'm single, they're thinking all these things. But in reality, like, I know that when
No one gives a shit.
I see people on their own, I'm not for them, are they single? Like, I think nothing of it. I'm like,
Yeah.
they're having a coffee by themselves, having lunch by themselves. It doesn't mean anything. At a wedding, if I see someone there by themselves, don't automatically go, oh, they must be single. Because I know full well that I've been to events where people have been in a partnership, but they're there on their own for whatever reason. Their partners is, away, can't make it, etc. And I don't kind of aim at the assumption that they're single, or B, think, oh, what's up with them? Like, but our internal dialogue is making all of those stories like, oh, I can't.
Oh, so much so. And when you really put it well about, you make assumptions, whether it's an event or a coffee shop, whatever. Just that simple step of just reorientating your thinking of like, okay, let me use that loaded label that I know. They're like, if they're on their own, like, visibly, they must mean they're single. And when you can go, actually, they might be here because their partner couldn't make it because they're looking after the children or whatever it might be. Just that simple change actually makes you give less of a toss about what's going on, and not be stuck of like, well, I've got to appear like, X, I've got to appear chatty or hide my singledom. Again, I've been in these situations too where, the in-joke in our circles is that, don't stay on your own or you get preyed upon by the army of aunties, trying to pull you, like, glue yourself together with somebody. Like, if anyone's a Simpsons fan, you remember the episode where Pooh got married? You had a long line of boys, long line of girls, right? You go there and she goes there, like a line diagram. Yeah, you want to hide from all that. But honestly, when you start going, people are just here at the event or the shop or whatever, doing their own business, and that's it. That little step, honestly, with practice, gives you a whole lot more just relief. You're like, do you know what? Everyone's free to do what they want. Everyone's normal. There's no need for a label. And you take away the stories as yourself, and the word stories you mentioned is really powerful. That, to be honest, our lives are literally a bunch of stories that we tell ourselves, and we have the power to change them through our experiences, thought patterns, a new perspective. Really powerful.
Yeah. And I think another challenge with being single as you get older is that you sometimes find within your like friendship circles, maybe you are the only one who is single. Like when you're in your 20s, often, most of your friends are single, and you might have the odd friend that's actually in a relationship. As you get older, sometimes it can be, do you know what, like, I'm the only single mum that I know, or everyone is in, relationships. I get a lot with older clients that I have where they're like, actually, I am the only one that's single. And before, we were all, doing social events where everyone was in a couple. And suddenly I find myself, excluded from that because I'm the only single person. Just sometimes found really useful. We can have, again, stories around how, like, oh, I'm not going to be welcome to that event because everyone's a couple, or I'm not going to get invited to things, or, I don't have children, all my friends have children, I'm kind of on my own, they're all like families. But actually, like, just sharing with your friends, like, your needs, just to be like, hey, look, I still want to be invited to these things. Like, I'd really appreciate if I could still come, just because I'm not with, my ex anymore. I'd love it if I could still be invited out to the dinners or to the social events, or just because I don't have a kid, like, I'd just love to still come along and, like, enjoy time. And actually just sharing that, because people don't know what they don't know, and sometimes we just think that they should know that we're going to be included. But it's just about someone sharing, like, can I be included?
Well, that's a brilliant point to make, because, as you say, we assume a lot
Mm.
in our daily lives of, is this a couple? I had an example actually a few years ago where we were on the wrong end of that. We as a group, like in my wider family, we have a group of singletons at the time, and we all went off on a holiday, and then we got, grief from the couples when we came back. So why didn't you invite me? So it's actually the other way around. But you see here that, it's just assumed like, well, you got kids, so you know, be able to come. Anyway, when we communicate what we want, it's such a benefit to ourselves. Now, like we mentioned before, how people react to that is not up to you.
Yeah.
But just the virtue of you actually vocalizing, this is what I'm looking for, and the right people will reciprocate that, will understand and listen to you, and go, yeah, that's a valid point. But just that sheer action of vocalizing what you want is actually raising your self worth a little bit higher. And to extend that a bit further, if they don't reply, that's okay. Now, that might be counterintuitive, because you're like, well, I told them what I want. Yeah, I'm not getting invited or whatever. Because, again, sometimes you just don't know what's going on. So, like, did they forget, or was it a personal thing with that? Because that again leads off to stories like you mentioned. Then you get paranoid. Why didn't they invite me? What have I done? What have I said? Do I you go off on one. And again, that whole sense of being okay with who you are, while still communicating outwards to people. So you're not just like, a one-man army trying to defy everybody. But at the same time, how other people respond is not your responsibility. And then you can actually then not make use of that, but go, okay, you can then do things that you want to do, because you've communicated what you're looking for. And you don't need to get hung up on responses, because that takes you back to old behaviors, people pleasing, biting your lip, all that kind of thing, which you want to get away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just staying in your truth and just hearing that, like when people do pass judgments, actually just expressing it. I've had it myself where, like, when I said I'm going to get divorced, they were kind of, oh, do you need to be doing that? And I know it was because of, like, well, I don't want to say that you're divorced, from a family member, but actually it's like, yeah, do you know what? Like, I do need to do it, and it's okay. Sharing it, or if you've got friends that are like, come on, let's get back out on the dating scene, get on that app, and you don't feel ready for it, just to say, I'm not ready for that yet. Like, I'm okay.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Just not being afraid to speak your truth, to say, actually, like, I'm not ready for that now. Or, the other way where clients have been ready to date and people have said, oh, you're moving on too quickly. And, like, it absolutely hasn't been too quickly at all. And they've almost stepped back from that, even though they've really liked someone, and just been able to express and say, I trust me that I know what's right for me. Like, it's not too soon. Like, I am ready for this. And, not being kind of put off things because other people have, views around it.
And again, that takes practice. It won't be easy, because sometimes you might feel, am I going to offend that person? They invited me out, and you're going, not feeling it. Honestly, if it just comes back to, I take responsibility for myself. I'm going to communicate what I want and what I feel is okay. You mentioned that, somebody inviting you out on, like, get back on the apps or that kind of thing. I experienced it myself. I went to a dating event around Christmas, and it was terrible. I went in, and it was just this dingy bar. A lot of people just didn't seem like they want to be there. I didn't feel it. I just not in the mood for it. And then there were people there trying to cajole you, going, you seem a bit down, so you can liven up a bit. I'm like, no, I just don't. So even in that live atmosphere, where the I guess the mantra there is like, G yourself up and be a bit of a presence. But honestly, it's like whatever was going on at the time. If you don't feel it, you don't. You don't need to force yourself through things, because that again reinforces the message to yourself that what you feel isn't good enough. Comes back to your self-worth. So if you want to go, I found myself going, do you know what? I'm going to make a move at 9 o'clock. It was meant to go until 10. I left at 9 going, nah, just not for me. Yeah. And that's absolutely okay.
Yeah, no, it's really, really kind of important just to, recognize that and just be like, actually, like, I'm not ready for this now, or I'm not feeling it, or I'm not feeling like wanting to go, on a date or go on a night out or whatever it might be. And actually just being into yourself, like, what feels good for me, you know, right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think people who watch this may be thinking, well, we talk about it being practice and, you know, bringing back to our own responsibility. You know, Charlotte, you mentioned earlier a great set of questions you can ask about what your wants are, you know, what your needs you're looking for, what can I do, what did I enjoy in the relationship that I could carry on doing. I'd like to just add to that by adding some more questions of like, well, how do you feel about being single? What would happen if you remain single? What would, you know, the more you ask yourself questions of this nature, we're not talking about visualizing here. We're not talking about making these states permanent. But what we are asking is that the more you ask yourself these questions, the more you actually find out and let your subconscious speak. Because we have a tendency at the moment to have a clash between our conscious and our unconscious mind. So your conscious mind is represented by your head voice, and your subconscious is your heart voice. Now, ordinarily when we hear a question, any question, whatever it is, so somebody said to you, how do you feel about X, Y, Z? Your heart voice will throw up an answer straight away based on intuition, gut, you know, your instinct. And your head voice will catch it and go, wait, before that gets put out there, is that the correct thing to say? Do I look stupid? Is that controversial? Do I need to tweak that a bit? So you find yourself doing that when you go, either you look up or you go, or you say things like, it's not embarrassment or frustration or whatever you vocalize. And then you try and wind it up by giving the PR version out. When actually it's interesting that you say it's not frustration, anger, embarrassment, whatever, but that's the feeling that came up from your heart voice. So a lot of this is actually reconnecting with your subconscious, because all your changes will be in your subconscious. If you try and change it at a conscious level, so you at the end of it, just saying it's okay to be single, won't really work until we work with the subconscious with the questioning, so that we can get to the point where we can say it's okay to be single.
Yeah, and a great thing I think helps as well is often we focus on like a lot of that when we're single, especially if we haven't chosen to be single, we didn't want to be single. We focus on like what we don't have, you know, oh, I don't have this with, I don't have somebody for that, I don't have this, I don't have somebody to do that for, like who am I going to go on holiday with, who am I going to do this with? But actually if you can step into a space of like, okay, like let's go into abundance and say like, what do I have, like what benefits, it just helps, because there are lots of benefits and you do have lots of things. And you know, like I had a client who very much once was stuck in the space of like, I don't have someone to go on holiday with now, and it was like, well, what if you just went on your own? And they now go on loads of solo holidays and, you know, absolutely, you know, love it. Whereas before it was like, I can't do that, can I? Like, yes, you can.
Why not, right? There's no ban on it.
Yeah, you're completely in control of that holiday. There's no negotiations. There's no kind of compromise. If you want to go somewhere, like, you are 100% in charge of making, you know, that happen. So sometimes it is looking at, you know, what are the benefits of being single, because there's benefits to both, and there's also, you know, things that we don't enjoy about both. You know, being in a relationship is not perfect either. So both had their cons. So just stepping into the pros of like, what can I enjoy about being single right now? Like, what are the benefits? You know, the fact that you are completely in control of everything. There's no having to think about anyone else other than, you know, your own, or perhaps if you are like a parent, it's just you and your children. It's a different space to be in. Like, there is still, you know, beauty in being able to just fully focus on, you know, yourself for a period of time.
I love that, because it's something you readily forget. You just feel that, like, right, either you do things as a couple or with somebody, or you can't do anything at all.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's the other way around. Really, there's actually more to do on your own than actually with somebody.
Yeah.
And you just think, well, I don't enjoy anything anymore. That's again the typical reaction you get, because you're like, well, you know, I experience things of like, you know, you struggle with things like shared experiences, like whether you went to somewhere special or you got, I don't know, a playlist or a mixtape. You know, mixtape's a bit old school, or things you share together where you think, if I encounter that somewhere again in life, like, you know, you come across the song or the play, you go to that place, like you get flashbacks, and then you're like, right, I can't think of that, so you push that away. But to add to your point about when you reopen yourself up to the things you can do as a solo person, whether that's going on holiday, going to a concert by yourself is actually pretty cool, because You don't have to worry about, is the other person getting squashed or lost or hungry, thirsty, or whatever you like. Just get in, get a good spot and enjoy yourself, right? And you're like, do you know what? I can enjoy myself and do things. But again, as you said, when you feel you've processed a lot through the space of like, okay, I'm in this space, you know, the space in between, as we keep referring it to, is actually quite a powerful space.
Yeah.
Because no longer are you having to suppress everything. Because you can, in fact, in this space, you can actually feel everything you felt with that person. So if it is grief and a sense of like loss, because it's really like, especially if it was unexpected, you know, you thought things were going along great,
yeah,
and then, you know, in very quick time, it wasn't there anymore. You have all sorts of coming out, you know. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anyone, and you know, people talk about the early hints of depression or, you know, getting into a slump. Again, counterintuitive as this, that's okay to feel. What the message you actually give yourself is let yourself feel it in full. So actually, if you do want to just not get out of bed for the morning or whatever, fine. You don't need to fight that, go, no, I've got to get up and got to do this. Because by doing that, you actually allow yourself to process the whole emotion. Because, you know, come back to a little bit of neuroscience here. A emotion is just a chemical reaction in our brain and system, that will pass through us in 90 seconds if we don't do anything to it. But at the moment, we're catching everything and applying meaning to it, and it gets stuck in our system. So that's things like pain, things like unresolved trauma and programming experiences. But when you give yourself the space to go, do you know what I feel is okay, I can process it, I can observe it, I can accept it, I don't need to be overwhelmed by it. And that then opens the door to you go, do you know what? I can go on holiday on my own. I can go to a concert on my own, go to the cinema on my own. I can go to parties on my own. Yeah. You actually then open up your own power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is important to have space for processing emotions, working through them. And like I like to think of emotions really as messages. They're telling us something.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this thing. I'm not okay with this thing. You know, on the flip side, this thing's bringing me joy. I want more of it in my life. And actually, when you can sort of process it and tap into that, you know, then what is possible? Like, how can you create that for, you know, yourself? You know, setting into your needs, or like you say, going on some solo experiences. And I've had some great solo experiences where I've met some fantastic people because I've been on my own. Back in January, I went down to, you know, London to manifestation workshop. I went all by myself and met like a huge group of, you know, northern ladies. If you're not from the UK, you might not know what northern, you know, but north of the UK. And I was on my own. They were like, hey, are you on your own? I was like, yeah, sure. And like, we all really connected, and I became like, you know, part of their group, and it was just a really beautiful, you know, experience to connect with new people. If I'd perhaps been there with, like, say, another friend, I may have very much stuck with that kind of friendship or in that kind of, you know, partnership with that other person, and not been so open to meeting new people because I was kind of, you know, busy talking to someone. But because I was on my own, I opened myself up to that. I actually met really beautiful people. So sometimes, you know, it is something that space of like, it's okay to go to this on my own because some beautiful things may happen. Like, what might happen today? Because I am here by myself. I'm noticing different things. I'm opening myself up to, you know, people connecting with me or reaching out to me or speaking with me. Who knows who I might just, you know, meet today.
And to extend that, when you do make it to these places, wherever it might be, meeting new people, making new connections, being there on your own, the simple fact that you're there, you should give yourself credit for that. Whether it ends up being, you know, a massive, great time, you know, huge opportunity to network with people or whatever, or it was just a case of, you know, you check something out, might not have been for you, or whatever it might be. You forget, at the moment, we tend to forget to give ourselves credit for these small things. And we're not saying, right, you know, everything's credit worthy, but that when we're in these positions of trying to embed the fact that, you know, I'm okay to be on, you know, to be single. I don't need someone always in tow, for example. That little moments like that give you your subconscious the proof that, hey, I can actually do this. And with more practice that I do, I'll get better at it, because we'll naturally pick up on cues, signs, the will and want to do something. And actually, we begin to keep asking ourselves the question, okay, what do we want? If it's not this, then might it be this?
Yeah.
And because we're flexible enough to come from the point of view that our opinion on anything can be flexible enough. We're not held to like, this is the only way to do it. When you're flexible enough, you actually give yourself so much more freedom and go, okay, I could meet somebody that has an opinion on whatever, and go, do you know what? You can come to the perspective, maybe they're right. We're not being a doormat. We don't need them to walk all over us, but we're flexible enough to go, okay, I'm not the expert on anything. I'm always learning. And when you practice that more, you actually, it sounds counterintuitive, you actually forget singledom for a bit, because you actually just, to use an overused phrase, in the flow.
Yeah.
Because you're just practicing these things of like, okay, I'm just doing what comes natural to me. And all of a sudden it's like, actually, I haven't considered that I'm single, if you will, for a long while. And, you know, that's quite a nice place to be in.
Yeah. So yeah, before we kind of like wrap up, like, have you got any sort of final like thoughts that, you know, you want to share about being, you know, okay with being single?
Yeah, I think the first phrase I'll use is be kind to yourself, which I know is overused and cliched nowadays because people just think that's a magic spell, like in Harry Potter. It doesn't work. Being kind to yourself means that as you go through these changes, first of all, ask yourself, do you want to? Are you courageous enough? And if you're not, that's okay. And as you go through this, you will make mistakes. We're not going to say it's plain sailing and that, you know, you keep practicing all, because there'll be times and days when you're like, I just miss the other person or just miss someone.
Yeah.
You know? And that's okay. What we're giving here is just another perspective to say you can build your path to your own inner peace, even if you change your mind along the way about where that's going. That's okay. So when we say it's okay to be single, what we're saying is like the more you work on your self-worth by just asking questions, having practice, being kind to yourself as you make mistakes and changing your mind, then things like singledom, self-worth and that actually repair themselves. So just stay kind to yourself and you'll get there.
Yeah, and I think for me, it would just be that being single doesn't mean anything about, you know, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough, that you're not in the right place. It doesn't mean that you are, you know, behind. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy, good enough, whatever label you want to, you know, put on it. It means absolutely nothing about you. You know, you're not behind, you're not failing at anything.
Exactly. It's not a race. You're not going to get a gold medal at the end of it or whatever. You know, people think it's a race, and you know, if you're the last man standing, well, great, I don't get a medal for it, or not you, and neither do you. So just let them think what they want. That's what it is.
So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you really enjoyed this live today. If you do have any questions or you're watching this on the replay, I'm going to share some of my feed. So please just drop them in the comments, and we will both, you know, come in and reply to any comments that are there. So yeah, thank you so much.
Likewise, yes. And just a quick thank you to Charlotte from me, because it's actually my first Insta live ever. So it's really nice to share this space with someone. So so very nice as well.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's lovely just chatting this topic through with you today.
Absolutely. Feel supersonic.
Absolutely right. Take care, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.
See you later. Bye.